My name is Pepa Alvarez. I'm one of the co-editors of Correspondent Voices, Volume 14, along with my colleagues who are also with us this evening, Tere Paniagua and Kathy Everly. We would like to thank you all for joining us tonight as we welcome poet David Lloyd. Each year, Point of Contact invites poets from around the world to publish in our annual poetry journal, Correspondent Voices. With this, our poets also take part in our poetry reading series, Cruel April, in celebration of National Poetry Month. We would like to thank our sponsors who have made this program possible. Syracuse University's College of Arts and Science, the New York State Council on the Arts, Syracuse University's Coalition of Museum and Arts Centers, Central New York Arts, Syracuse University's Department of Languages, Literatures and Linguistics, and Poets and Writers. We would also like to honor and acknowledge the Haudenosaunee people on whose ancestral lands Point of Contact now stands. David Lloyd is the author of 11 books, including 4 poetry collections, The Body's Compass, Warriors, The Gospel According to Frank, and The Everyday Apocalypse. His fiction titles include Boys, Stories and a Novella, Over the Line, and his story collection, The Moving of the Water. In 2000, he received the Poetry Society of America's Robert H. Winner Memorial Award. In 2001, he was a Fulbright Distinguished Scholar at Bangor University, Wales, and he also received a Fulbright Scholar Award for residence at Cardiff University in 2021. His poems and stories have appeared in numerous journals, including Craft Orchard Review, Denver Quarterly, and Virginia Quarterly Review. He directs the creative writing program at Lemoyne College in Syracuse, New York. This evening's English translations will be read by Orlando Ocampo, Associate Professor at the Foreign Language and Literatures program at Lemoyne College. Orlando is also a contributing translator to Correspondent Voices, Volume 14. Welcome, David and Orlando.
Thank you. It was a little odd to begin with. I didn't see all the faces. I thought there were just 4 people there. And now I see a number of friends and family, names and faces, many people who are very important to me and some who are strangers. Thank you all for coming tonight. I've been looking forward to giving this reading. I want to thank Pepa Alvarez in particular for contacting me about this reading. She's been a friend and colleague for many years. And only recently I've really spoken more with Sarah and Terry, who have done such wonderful work at the gallery. I think that point of contact, punto de contacto, is just an extremely important part of the artistic and writing communities in Syracuse. So I'm very, very happy to be part of their efforts. And finally, I've been lucky enough to have worked with, again, a good friend and colleague, Orlando Ocampo. Known him for a long time. Orlando has been translating the poems you're going to hear tonight. He'll read the translations after each of my English language poems. So, you know, I've spent hours talking with Orlando about words. What could be better? What they sound like, where they fit in sentences and different meanings. And that's been a joy. So I don't think I wanted to, I've probably forgotten something I wanted to say. Oh yes, I've got a family and friends, a poet, Chris Meredith from Wales, and some family from Wales and England. It's late there. I will say Noswaith dda, which is good evening in Welsh. Thank you for coming, taking your time out when you should really be in bed sleeping. It is Earth Day, so I wrote a number of poems relating to the environment. And all of the ones today take the earth, locally and globally, as subject matter. That's been consuming me for years. So all the poems I'm reading tonight will be about that subject. I'll start with one titled Forgotten. The gods are angry. I hear it in their pulsing silence. angry at the mirrors in bathrooms, at rivers no longer obeying the simplest dictates, at seas coagulating their own continents, at multitudinous species sacrificed, but not to them, angry at wine leaked in alleyways, licked from sidewalks, angry at screaming birds that won't bend their wings, angry at thousands of buried suns. I should do something to save us, but I've forgotten which herbs to burn, forgotten who to love and why, which well is sacred for which affliction, how to slash with a sanctified knife to give pause, forgotten how to touch my firstborn, forgotten the words the gods can hear, forgotten even their names, always near our lips, and the names of their offspring, embalmed in constellations, no longer out of reach.
Sorry. I am not going to attempt to translate what the introduction that David did, because I realize that most of you are English speakers, native English speakers, so you understand that. So I will just move on right to the poems. So, olvidado. Los dioses están enojados. Lo oigo en su silencio pulsante. Enojados con los espejos en los baños, con los ríos que ya no obedecen los dictados más simples, con los mares que coagulan a sus propios continentes, con las multitudinarias especies que son sacrificadas, pero no con ellas. Enojados con el vino volcado en los callejones, lamido de las aceras. Enojados con los pájaros chillando que no doblarán sus alas. Enojados con los miles de soles enterrados. Debería hacer algo para salvarnos, pero he olvidado qué hierbas quemar. Olvidado a quién amar y por qué. ¿Cuál es la fuente sagrada para qué enfermedad? ¿Cómo cortar con un cuchillo santificado para dar alivio? He olvidado cómo acariciar mi primogénito. Olvidado las palabras que los dioses pueden escuchar. Olvidado aún sus nombres, siempre en la punta de la lengua, y los nombres de sus descendientes, embalsamados en constelaciones y fuera de nuestro alcance.
Thanks, Orlando. My wife, Kim Wally, had an artist residency in Berllanderry in South Wales some years ago, and I was able to tag along. And she spent a good deal of time drawing cows in the Welsh pastures and fields around the residency site, which is really an old farm. So I spent a lot of time looking at cows too, and sheep, which I liked. And this poem is titled Cows, and it's one result of that time. The location in Wales accounts for the mention of magpies, which I don't think are in the United States, though they're all over Europe. So cows. Digestion takes forever. So does staring at hills, minute by minute shadings. If cold, they lie down. If hot, they stand. Chewing is a lifetime pursuit. Magpies, their day-long companions. Sex, a violent spasm, it's true, but occasional, then the burden slides off. Their massive, warm, hairy bodies, their slow, curious snouts, their teats filling with milk through the night. Roused by the farmer's prod, their calves close by, they don't complain much, one field to the next, tails flicking, crowding to the never long enough trough. When they turn their huge heads towards you, They see you, they blink, and then you're gone.
Thank you, David. This was a little bit interesting to find out when David and I talked, and I realized that, yes, magpies are really absent from the American fauna, and not only in Europe, but also in Latin America. It's a very familiar bird, and a bird that has been present in literature, in opera, for a long time. So it was interesting to learn that there are no magpies in the United States. So, vacas. La digestión toma mucho tiempo. También lo toma mirar colinas, sus sombras, minuto a minuto. Si tienen frío, se acuestan. Si calor, se quedan de pie. Masticar es una tarea de toda la vida. Las urracas, sus constantes compañeras. El sexo, un espasmo violento, es verdad, pero solo de vez en cuando. Después, la carga resbala. Sus cuerpos masivos, calientes, peludos. Sus hocicos, curiosos, lentos. Sus ubres, llenándose de leche durante la noche. Urgidas por la picana del granjero, con sus crías cercas, no se quejan mucho. De un prado a otro, sacudiendo las colas, amontonándose en torno al abrevadero, nunca lo suficientemente grande. Cuando vuelven las cabezotas hacia ti, te ven, parpadean y tú desapareces.
Thank you. There's a number of birds in these poems. You'll notice as we go on, really almost every one. This is a bird from my youth, a parakeet. No words. The parakeet says what you say. Hello, goodbye, pretty boy, I love you, good night, good morning. But what does he say before you stumble to the kitchen for coffee? And what after you've said goodnight and he said goodnight? Not a syllable, not a whistle, not a sigh, just the preening of feathers, a squirt on the day's news, a shuffle along the peg and back, a glance at the smudged oval mirror, though he doesn't know his captured self. No words. There's nothing to repeat. No dream of conversation. Only the self, caged in darkness, small and wild with clipped wings, before you stumble in, after you say goodnight.
Thank you, David. In translated parakeet, I had to make a decision about which of the words to use. Some countries use periquito, which is very close to parakeet, but we decided to go with lorito, diminutive of loro, which is much more common in Latin America, especially from Brazil down. So that's the one that I used in this poem. Sin palabras. El lorito dice lo que tú dices. Hola, chao, chico lindo, te quiero, buenas noches, buenos días. Pero ¿qué dice antes que entres a trompicones en la cocina buscando café? Y después que hayas dicho buenas noches y él haya repetido buenas noches, ni una sílaba, ni un silbido, ni un suspiro. Solo un acicalarse de plumas, un chorro sobre las noticias del día. Un andar bamboleante de ida y vuelta por la percha, un vistazo al sucio espejo ovalado, aunque no reconozca su imagen cautiva. Sin palabras, no hay que repetir. Ningún sueño de conversaciones, solo él, enjaulado en la oscuridad, pequeño y salvaje, con las alas cortadas. Antes que entres a trompicones, después que digas buenas noches.
The kingfisher is one of my favorite birds to watch, not in a cage, but flying by the west branch of Limestone Creek, which is just down from where I live. And there's one there last summer that I saw quite a bit. So this is titled Kingfisher Show. They're true performers. Everywhere I look, I can't, because this showboat steals the show. Paddling through evening air with a priest's collar, crazed, uncombed hair, killer beak, that blue feather suit, then direct to a branch a dozen feet from my front row seat with masterful monologue. Death, life, meat, no translation necessary. You're the star of this spectacle, I say, but now we're done. It's curtain call. Take a bow. I have dinner plans, HBO, family time under a leaky roof on my favorite couch. But before I go, unscripted drama. Two deer leap a prone sycamore, and my kingfisher, knowing who is always king, launches across the creek where my eyes must follow.
Thank you, David. We spent some time trying to come up with an adequate translation for showboat. Something that we definitely do not have in Hispanic culture. So we settled for the closest thing. I had to explain to David what possibilities there were, and finally we found one that he agreed on, and I'm happy about that. Show del Martín Pescador. Donde quiera que mire, no puedo, porque este fanfarrón se roba el show. Presumiendo por el aire nocturno con el alzacuello de un cura, cabello enloquecido, despeinado, un pico letal, ese traje de plumas azul. Después, directo a una rama a una docena de pies de mi asiento de primera fila, con un monólogo magistral. Muerte, vida, carne. No hace falta traducción. Eres la estrella de este acto, te lo digo yo. Pero ahora hemos terminado. Hora de bajar el telón. Saluda al público. Yo tengo planes para la cena. HBO, tiempo para la familia en mi sofá favorito, bajo un techo que gotea. Pero antes que me vaya, un drama improvisado. Dos ciervos saltan sobre un sicómoro prostrado y mi Martín Pescador, sabiendo siempre quién es el rey, se lanza a través del arroyo, a donde mis ojos tienen que seguirlo.
Thanks, Orlando. I have to say, I love hearing Orlando read these poems. We basically would, do individual phrases, words, a lot about showboat, and some other words you might hear about, but hearing it all read is great. Thanks, Orlando. Beaver Mind is the next poem. I'm just trying to look at the Spanish it took 4 words for Orlando to get Beaver Mind, which is 1 word, but I made it up. So Beaver Mind, there's a pond by this creek where the kingfisher flies, and there have been beavers there. There aren't right now. There's an old lodge there. So this is from that observation. A low-tech lumberjack with all that tree felling, log rolling, a sentinel safeguarding stations of the pond, equipped for winter's depredations with anchored bales in a soggy pantry. Family, certainly. The kits groomed and oiled, cavorting in shallow safety, slapping mini tails like daddy or mommy when they glimpse the voyeur in the brush. Social, absolutely. Welcoming even the skulking, ungrateful muskrat to hearth and home. But when is enough enough? Enough wood gnawed, enough flow dammed, enough birth, enough forest bridged to meadow? When does nightfall's memory of steel teeth and bullets, skin and fur draped over heads and shoulders, dim to midnight that cheerful buck-toothed face? Never, I'm afraid. For the beaver mind knows this and here, not that and there, which is why when bats touch our faces and clouds inch like continents over our heads, we need the beaver, gnawing trunks, staunching wounds in dams, praying with dexterous paws.
Thank you, David. Well, if we struggled a little bit with Showboat, not only did we struggle with beaver mine, but the real problem was log rolling, which, I mean, there is no word because we don't have that activity at all. So we had to come up with alternatives, and hopefully this at least picks up the spirit of the poem. La mente del castor. Un simple leñador con todo ese talar de árboles, ese recoger ramas, un centinela custodiando las estaciones del estanque, equipado para los estragos del invierno, con fardos anclados en una despensa empapada. Su familia, claro, las crías acicaladas y aceitadas, jugueteando en una seguridad poco profunda, azotando sus colitas como papá o mamá, cuando notan a este voyeur en la maleza. Sociable, por supuesto, dándole la bienvenida de vuelta al hogar y a la casa, incluso la rata almizclera que merodea desagradecida. Pero ¿cuándo basta ya de roer tanta madera, de construir tantos diques, de tener tantas crías, de reducir tanto bosque a prado? Cuando el recuerdo nocturno de dientes de acero y de balas, de pieles colgadas de hombros y cabezas, opacan en la oscuridad ese rostro dientudo y alegre? Me temo que nunca, porque la mente del castor sabe lo que hay, esto y aquí, no eso y allá. Por eso es que cuando los murciélagos tocan nuestras caras y las nubes grandes como continentes se ciernen sobre nuestras cabezas, necesitamos al castor, royendo troncos, vendando heridas en las represas, orando con sus diestras garras.
Thank you, Orlando. These next three poems are from a sequence. It's a longer sequence titled A Table of Elements. And I'll read the first element, so-called, is wind, but I'll read them one by one. Orlando will read the translation after each. So this is wind. In the calm before the tornado, trees are composed. Wind sifts through the world, shrugging airy shoulders. It's heard the news on airwaves from north and west, where all that's rooted is ravaged. But wind never cared for grip or gravity or keys or sealed windows or solids slogging on 2s and 4s. The news is nothing, for wind has seen it all. The Minuteman's silo's sludgy floor, the fake turbulence of a Black Hawk, the zero at the heart of the swirl. Any obstacle can be sidestepped, any mass flipped, any bird crippled. Even these trees, close like a flock, owning the evening, contemplating the years like the great-great-grandparents they are, cradling creatures within their compass. Even these trees add up to zero when the ancient wind feels the spirit rise.
Thank you, David. In this case, we have to decide whether to keep Minuteman in or not. I believe this missile I don't think it's not any longer used, whereas the Black Hawk helicopter is always omnipresent in all the news, etc. So that's therefore the translation. Viento. En la calma que precede al tornado, los árboles están serenos. El viento se cuela por el mundo encogiéndose de hombros. Se oyen las noticias en las emisoras del norte y del oeste, donde todo lo que tiene raíces es arrasado. Pero al viento nunca le importaron el control, la gravedad, ni llaves, ni ventanas selladas, ni cuerpos sólidos caminando trabajosamente a 2 o a 4 patas. Las noticias no dicen nada nuevo, porque el viento lo ha visto todo. El piso fangoso del silo de un misil, la turbulencia falsa de un Black Hawk, el cero en el corazón del remolino. Cualquier obstáculo puede esquivarse, cualquier masa dada vuelta, cualquier pájaro dañado. Incluso estos árboles, apretados como una manada que se adueñan de la noche, contemplando los años como los tatarabuelos que son, meciendo criaturas en su compás. Incluso estos árboles no cuentan para nada cuando el antiguo viento siente que se le ensalza el espíritu.
Thanks, Orlando. The next element is fire. The world is burning. Fire of the instant, fire of the millennium, fire fighting fire. In the core, flaring off the sun, detonating cloud to cloud, dendrite to cell, flares from fingertips, in the widow's pyre, across synapses with each memory spark, each blink of an eye. Your hand on my forehead, your hand on my chest, skin yearning to become wind or soil or another creature's fire, burning from birth, consuming each second, regardless of what is scorched or extinguished.
Thank you, David. Fuego. El mundo está ardiendo. Fuego del instante, fuego del milenio, fuego contra fuego. En el centro, llameando desde el sol, detonando nube a nube, dendrita a célula, llamaradas en de la punta de los dedos, en la pira de la viuda, a través de sinapsis con cada chispa de la memoria, con cada abrir y cerrar de ojos, tu mano sobre mi frente, tu mano sobre mi pecho. Piel que ansía ser viento o tierra o el fuego de otra criatura, ardiendo desde el nacimiento, consumiendo cada segundo, sin importarle lo que queme o extinga.
This next one in the sequence, water, mentions AccuWeather, which is a pretty terrible weather app, actually. It's got a lot of ads in it. Used to be good. But I think Orlando translated AccuWeather as AccuWeather, as it should be, as brand name. Water. Where there's water, something happens. On Mars, in your brain, the caves green, performances of paradise, early spring, central New York, orgies that forgot to say they'd be knocking on all my doors. AccuWeather promised all clear when I fired up the grill, caveman at home with flames and a grocery kill in a world bereft of mastodon and mammoth. Fingers fussing with air vent and grill lid, eager to stab with a stabbing tool. Yet the commuting clouds didn't check in with AccuWeather. Too busy mustering an hour's Armageddon, glut of what we need, pondered by Noah in his bone-dry heart. Drum rolls, ricochets, steam escaping to a needy mother. And I give up my paleo dreams. Take me, take me. I open my arms to the big body of the sky, which sees me trifling on this earth and knows me and answers in thunder, in lightning, in ragged wind, and matter-of-fact rain.
Thanks, David. The decision to keep AccuWeather was, on the one hand, because the word itself implies or denotes as some kind of service that promises to give you accurate weather conditions throughout the day. So that's why we decided to keep it. Agua. Donde hay agua, algo pasa. En Marte, en tu cabeza, la caverna es verde. Representaciones del paraíso, primavera temprana, zona central del estado. Orgías que se olvidaron de decir que golpearían a todas mis puertas. AccuWeather prometía cielo despejado cuando puse la parrilla. Cavernícola casero con llamas y carne de supermercado. En un mundo falto de mastodontes y mamuts. Los dedos jugando con la tapa y los ventiletes de la parrilla, ansioso de hincar con un largo tenedor, pero las nubes viajeras no se registran con el servicio de AccuWeather. Demasiadas ocupadas armando un Armageddon de una hora, con la acumulación de lo que necesitamos, rumiado por Noé en su corazón sediento. Redoblo de tambores, rebotes de granizo, vapor escapando hacia una madre necesitada. Y yo renuncio a mis sueños paleolíticos. Llevadme, llevadme. Abro mis brazos al gran cuerpo del cielo, que me ve insignificante en esta tierra y me conoce. Y me responde con truenos, con relámpagos, con ráfagas irregulares y con simple lluvia.
Thanks, Orlando. There's probably two explanations I should give for this poem. The title and the final lines refer to a story by one of my favorite writers, Flannery O'Connor. I'm sure many, if not most of you know it. A good man is hard to find. Also, there's a reference to a photograph, and it's a real photograph of Teddy Roosevelt standing by a dead elephant in Africa. And the title is No Real Pleasure. Like all that breathe, the mourning dove mourns, living a chancy life, foraging the still breathing earth for seeds, bobbing its head this way, that, there, constant heads up for the killing instant, flying bullet straight, my book says, but can't escape the bullet. Each year, 20 million harvested like a continent of corn. The oldest banded in Georgia, 1968, shot dead in Florida, 1998. Like BBs for squirrels, like frogs in that upstate pond I'd like to forget. Roosevelt's elephant on its side, Teddy's hand on the still warm hide, the other around his Winchester barrel, mustache drooped, eyes level at the camera, while the elephant eye angles nowhere. So many memories, so many wrinkles in skin, so much meat, so much blood sinking. Like every conquest that's a window to a damaged soul. Flannery O'Connor's misfit knew it in his soul and said it. Shut up, Bobby Lee. It ain't no real pleasure in life.
Thank you, David. Yes, this is also A Good Man is Hard to Find. Un buen hombre es difícil de encontrar. By Flannery O'Connor is one of my favorite stories too. And we read it in one of David's class. I have to tell you that I met David, here on campus. We started becoming friends when I asked him if I could take his class on fiction writing, even though it was advanced fiction. And I said, look, I've never written anything. He said, no, go ahead, come in. And that was the beginning of me taking 4, 5, 6 classes with David and enjoying every one of them. So, okay, there it goes. Ningún placer. Como todo lo que respire, la paloma de luto lamenta, viviendo una vida arriesgada, buscando semilla en la aún viviente tierra, subiendo y bajando su cabeza por aquí, por allá, más allá, un constante alerta para el instante matador, volando derecho como una bala, dice en mi libro, pero no puede escapar a la bala. Cada año 20 millones son cosechadas cual continente de maíz. La más antigua anillada en Georgia en 1968, muerta a tiros en la Florida en 1998. Como rifles de balines para ardillas, como las ranas en ese estanque de la infancia que me gustaría olvidar. El elefante de Roosevelt a su lado, una mano de Teddy aún sobre la piel caliente, la otra apretando el cañón de su Winchester, el bigote caído, los ojos fijos en la cámara, mientras los del elefante no miran hacia ninguna parte. Tantos recuerdos, tantas arrugas en mi piel, tanta carne, tanta sangre hundiéndose en la tierra. Como cada conquista que es una ventana abierta a un alma dañada. El misfit de Flannery O'Connor lo sabía en su corazón y lo dijo. Cállate, Bobby Lee. No hay ningún placer verdadero en la vida.
Thanks, Orlando. I'm going to end with this poem, which is titled Wilderness. My father was a minister, and he was ordained in the Calvinist Methodist Church in Wales, and my cousins from Wales and England will understand the importance of that fact. He and my mother emigrated after World War II with my eldest brother and my sister. I was born here. They were Welsh speaking in Wales, and also obviously here too. But this poem has nothing to do with that, except that I can't seem to keep the Bible out of my poems, or at least not all of them. So you'll see that in this poem. So I'll end with this, and then you'll hear Orlando. Wilderness. Isaiah called out where he imagined only God could hear. Beneath a blank sky, above a thirsty earth, indifferent to human tracks. Calling for a path through the maze, through a turmoil of trudging, spirals paved with gold, guarded with ballistic swords. The sand beneath his sandals heard him, and flies in rock clefts, and the seeds of desert flowers that bloom once a lifetime, they heard him within their knotted selves. And all answered with miracles of sight and sound that Isaiah, eyes upwards, arms outstretched, tense and unyielding, could not see and could not hear.
Thank you, David. I don't want to end this without mentioning, in reference to Wales, that another thing that David and I and Bill Morris, a friend of us who was director of theater here at Moyne College, have been dreaming, not planning, just dreaming of someday perhaps launching an expedition to Patagonia, because in Argentina, in southern Argentina, in Patagonia, there still lives a Welsh community. The language, unfortunately, has been kind of disappearing among the young, but there are many small towns, villages with Welsh names, and you can find tea houses, and I imagine you could talk to the people and hear the Welsh language over there. But anyways, Páramo. Isaías clamaba donde creía que solo Dios podía oírlo, bajo un cielo vacío, sobre una tierra sedienta, indiferente al paso de los hombres, clamando por un camino a través del laberinto, de un andar fatigoso y confuso, espirales pavimentadas de oro, custodiadas con espadas balísticas. La arena bajo su pie, bajo sus sandalias, lo oyó, y las moscas en las grietas de las rocas, y las semillas de flores del desierto que solo florecen una vez en la vida, lo oyeron dentro de su naturaleza anudada. Y todos y todas le respondieron con milagros de la vista y el oído que Isaías, con los ojos y los brazos levantados, tenso y obstinado, no podía ver, no, ni podía oír.
Great, Orlando, thank you. And maybe I can say one thing, reflecting well on myself. I don't think I heard Orlando's writing through all those workshops, as you can see from his translations. Very good, thank you.
Thank you, David. It was wonderful I think that is so different when you listen the poems from the author. Is amazing because you can perceive the rhythms, and it's beautiful. And thank you, Orlando. I love the translation as well.
Beautiful job, both of you. We have time now actually for questions or comments or community discussion. Feel free to unmute yourselves. It doesn't look like we have so many that I'd be worried about people talking over each other. So if you have a question, feel free to ask now.
Mhm.
I just want to say it's not a question that, sometimes people ask, which one is more difficult to translate into English or from English into Spanish? And I have to say that the second one. There are expressions, there are words in English that I understand that are totally perfect for the language, and that usually are contained in one word or just a very small phrase. And you have to really struggle sometimes to find how to express that in Spanish. And, particularly in poetry, without being too wordy or extending the line too much. So it is fun, but it is a little bit of struggling too.
And I should put in a plug for Corresponding Voices, which is the anthology that the gallery is publishing. It'll have Orlando's translations, also my poems, and the other poets during Cruel April. So you'll be hearing that later, but I'm going to be glad to see the Spanish in print also.
Yes, if anyone is interested in pre-purchasing a copy, you can do so on our website. I will drop the link in the chat now.
I just wanted to say thank you to David and Orlando. That was really wonderful. I don't know Spanish, but I love listening to poetry in other languages because there's so much that's that is conveyed through the voice and the sounds of the words. And I don't have that in English because I go to the meaning right away. But let me think. I have one comment and then a question. The first is that I love the poem about cows, and especially the opening line. That, what is it? Digestion takes a long time. Forever. Digestion takes forever. It does take forever. And I loved it because it sent me straight to Caedmon's hymn and this the first so-called poet in the English language who was fed the stories of the Bible, David, and then they were transmuted into the purest milk, like a cow, right? So poetry itself is like poetry, and translation into poetry is like cud chewing and digestion. So I loved it for that reason, among others. I wanted to ask Orlando about the process of translation and the way in which, translation, of course, involves interpretation. And I'm wondering if you had, in the process of translating, some insights that you wanted to share about sort of meaning in any of the poems that only came to you through translation and maybe not before.
Oh yes, very definitely. Like I said, when I translate something, I usually take a look at it and give it a try. And then when I get stuck, I put it aside and then I revisit it later. If I can talk to the poet, that is great, but sometimes I cannot, or I have to wait a bit. And that really sends me down a path in which, okay, what am I getting from this? How am I interpreting this? What can I bring of, my own knowledge, culture, etc., that could match what the poet is trying to say. And like I said, there were several things in there like showboat, log rolling, etc., that it doesn't exist in Spanish language or culture. And so it is, you have to look for an alternative, and then, you know, that's the give and take, and the final word is the poets who wants to keep its original intent and say, well, okay, how can we minimize any damage or reduction here and still, you know, come up with something that makes sense and that carries the same emotional impact. Others are a little bit more, you know, pedestrian, like BB guns. We don't have BB guns, or we don't call them BB guns, but it's a long word. It's compressed air rifles. Okay, well, how are we going to work with that? So we just came up, and instead of saying BB guns, we just talked about the pellets, the both guns used to kill squirrels. So okay, well, that worked, because to have put all the other words in there would have distracted a little bit from that. But yeah, I learn a lot. I enjoy it, and that's why I love translating.
No, BB gun is such a great kind of a gun, just a word for a gun. And it brings me right back to when, I was a kid, and a friend here, Pat Scully from my youth, who knows all about BB guns also. Terrible weapon for a kid to have. But one of my experiences, and Maura, thank you for your connection to Caedmon's hymn. It's a beautiful thing to think about. But Orlando would very often give me 3 or 4 words. So, we'd be talking about a word, my word in English, and then a word in Spanish, and listen to the sounds. And very often I just knew which one of the ones Orlando suggested. He had a wonderful way of getting a selection. Any one could have worked, but often one was exactly, for me, the right word. And that was part of the process. And thanks.
Where on Limestone Creek
Go ahead, Michael.
are you walking?
Oh, where? Okay.
Where on Limestone Creek?
Right. Well, so, I don't know if you know where Brickyard Falls is. There's a beautiful waterfall. It used to be public. Somebody bought it. And there's a firehouse just beyond it, an old kind of abandoned firehouse now. And then the West Branch flows down past where I live into the village of Manlius, where it connects with the main branch of Limestone Creek. So it's just up, I think it's probably north, but my sense of direction is horrible. I should get help us out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'd like to ask something, if I may.
Chris, hi.
Yeah. David, nice to see you. Good to see you looking well. And thank you, Orlando and David. Wonderful readings. I'd like to ask David about the effect of being translated on you. And first of all, I mean, are you able to read the Spanish versions of your poems at all? So how is your Spanish coming along? And secondly, is it possible that the process of being translated actually changes your perceptions and insights into your own work?
For the first question, no, I cannot read Spanish. So I was utterly reliant on Orlando to read it out loud, to give me the sounds of it, and then listen to that. And trying to match the brevity of what I wanted in English. Orlando was great with that. And to the second question, I wish I had instances, but there were moments. I don't know, Orlando, did I actually change a poem? Orlando would come up with a word in Spanish and he would say, the English equivalent is this. And I'd say, that's better than what I wrote. I mean, I think you should use that word. So yes, it did make me rethink my choices. And I may have altered some poems. I probably have notes somewhere about whether I did it or not, or planned to do it. But the experience, whether or not I changed it, made me changed my sense of the poem a little bit, if that makes sense. It broadened it, hearing Orlando's take on it. And Orlando is also just a good reader of poetry. I mean, explicator of poetry too. So those were parts of our conversations. Yeah, I would love to do it again. Maybe I'll persuade Orlando again.
Thank you.
One of the examples, like I said, was Showboat, and there was nothing I could come up with. So, you know, what happens in Showboat? Okay, there are people acting, and in this case, the idea of the Kingfisher, it's really putting on a show. And so I thought of different ways of coming up, because he also has the word show off in the poem. So we talked over and said, so how can we use these two words? And, you know, you're not repeating the same word. You're not saying show off twice, but coming up with alternatives. And actually, the word we chose, fanfarrón, it has a little pejorative meaning of somebody that really show off for the sake of putting on a spectacle. And it can be admired, but it's also, it's a little bit putting off because it's showing off too much.
Some things are going to get lost, you know, the whole kind of Mark Twain, you know, gambling people going up and down the Mississippi. You're not going to get that with whatever equivalent we can find, but we gain other things, I hope.
Fabulous. Anybody else?
Thanks also for these wonderful comments. I'm getting a chat sort of scroll here.
I know, everybody's singing your praises, so.
Thank you for that.
Okay, well, if we don't have anyone else, thank you, David. Thank you, Orlando, Peppa, Kathy, Terry. It's been a pleasure. Remember, folks, we are back with Ada Salas tomorrow night at 5 p.m. So please join us. And thank you all for being here tonight. Remember, Corresponding Voices Volume 14 is available for pre-order. Just send me an email, click the link. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you so much. It's frustrating because I want to talk to all of you, but I can't. But you anyway.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Orlando, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to do this, and to translate and read the poems.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.